McDonald's is a place where you can find something new every few kilometers. It doesn't take much time to drive towards those golden arches and the strange but delicious burgers that you can taste from your car. It's a good thing we don't have one near Dad and Roastin' any longer. After witnessing clowns a few years ago, the locals decided to ride it and burn the McDonald's due to the Ronald McDonald VDJ TM statue being so intimidating. I'm about to overlook it. Today, the focus of news coverage is on McDonald's and some extremely unsettling incidents that have been reported. Beware of these tales. Have a look. Prepare for violent assaults, enigmatic creatures, and distressing revelations. These are stories from the locker room. It assaulted me. The source of information is Garner. I'm certain that the 2 nights spent at a McDonald's in Maine during the graveyard shift will never be forgotten. The exact location won't be revealed for the sake of confidentiality. My high school junior year was in 2009. As a part-time clerk, I needed money to buy the car. The overnight crew was composed of only 3 individuals: myself, Reggie the manager, and Steve the one-line cook. The place was open 24 hours, as we received a lot of business from truckers and partygoers. During the beginning and ending of my workday, I was responsible for cleaning the bathrooms. Being the only girl, I typically just cleaned up the women's room. Steve was swamped on the line that night, and Reggie asked me to clean up the men's room as well. Our men's room was reduced to a small closet, 1 toilet, and 1 sink. Initially, I didn't have much interest in it. I reached for the mop bucket and started cleaning. The toilet was scuffed with my back turned to face towards the door. I heard a voice behind me which was very masculine when it was clear as day. The message was to refrain from turning around. My heart raced as I froze to the core. The tone was low and unsteady, almost a growl. I was certain that there was nobody else in the room with me. To get to the toilet, I would have had to crawl past them. Is it advisable for me to leave the house immediately? Take a step back and confront the person who was involved. The sound of the stream that came from the bathroom door opening was audible to me before I could make a decision. I sprinted, hoping to spot an unusual person sneaking up on me. Despite this, there was no one present. Reggie was informed of the incident by me, and then he scrutinized our security tapes. Naturally, they exhibited zilch. He volunteered to clean the men's room and then come back later. I was unable to go back into that place. Although I wasn't easily scared, that voice was too authentic. It seemed like the person was right behind me. It still gives me goosebumps when I think about it. I was aware of what Reggie had been teasing me about the bathroom ghost for weeks. Even though it was creepy, the situation got worse after a few weeks. This brings me to the second night. Another slow night. It began at 2 a.m. Reggie and I were the only ones present as Steve had returned from his illness. As I was restocking on napkins, Reggie inquired if I could borrow more burger patties from the freezer. To escape from boredom, I grabbed my jacket and headed towards the back. We used a large walk-in freezer to store meat and produce. I entered the building, frantically trying to find the light switch, but was soon hit by freezing temperatures. I was on the hunt for burger patties when the heavy metal door suddenly opened. I jumped, uncertain as to how the door had come down. I attempted to use the interior handle, but it appeared to be malfunctioning. That door was being tightly held by someone. Something. I yelled and pounded on the door, but Reggie didn't seem to hear me out of the kitchen. The temperature was so low that my breath became frozen. It was at that point that I felt it. I was forcefully pushed against the wall by an invisible force, almost breaking my windpipe. I stooped at my neck, but there was no sensation. I didn't use my hands or fingers to hold it down, but something was pushing towards my throat, like a pair of frozen hands that were trying to strangle me. Shortly after, marks appeared before my eyes. I had a feeling that I would die alone in that freezer. All of a sudden, the pressure became evident. Reggie's eyes widened as she threw open the door of the freezer, his alarm being heard. I stumbled, experiencing chest pain and stuttering. Reggie held me down and demanded to be informed of the outcome. I let out a gash through my chatty teeth, which choked me. Reggie had assaulted me. A glance at his face revealed that he was skeptical of the idea. He scoured the freezer before venturing into the restaurant. We were the only ones present. Reggie compelled me to drink hot tea in his office until my parents arrived. The next day I resigned and informed everyone that I had an improved opportunity to serve at the downtown diner. Fortunately, I was terrified of returning to that Mickey D's. There was a dark truth there that nobody could understand. It was evident that the staff who worked overnight had a question to answer. Specifically myself. My current job requires me to drive past McDonald's every now and then, especially at night. The sign's radiance is captivating, like a beacon shining in the darkness. I habitually stare into the darkness of the parking lot, half expecting to see the dark person who spoke to me. There are moments when I can't help but imagine the freezer door swinging open, and a cold, invisible force is alluring me, reminding me of my awareness of what's out there. I'm afraid it's waiting for another unfortunate person to enter its grasp, and the small hours between midnight and dawn. A tragic incident involving 2 McDonald's employees. Today, I have 2 stories to share. In 2022, the initial event will occur in a small Arkansas town located approximately an hour north of Little Rock. My fiancé and I had just relocated to Arkansas in March of 2022. Having worked at McDonald's 2 years ago and was in the process of transitioning to managerial roles, my brother-in-law suggested that he could use his connections from there. After the interview, I became a manager and quickly started sharing shifts with other managers or myself when I ended my employment. This narrative occurred at approximately 5 p.m., just before I was scheduled to leave and head home. We named Little Andrew, the manager in my line, as his replacement for me that night, due to his height of 6 feet and weight of 270 pounds, which was roughly equivalent to 5'3" and to 190 pounds. In any case, Little Andrew was also present. After an hour or two, I was supposed to check out when a customer entered the drive-thru. He procured a substantial fry. Keep in mind that, as well as a double quarter-pound cheeseburger and fewer than 10 other items. He appeared ordinary as he approached the window. Our employees were treated kindly by him, and he even refused our request to come in for fries, which is not often the case as it can cause people to become angry. Upon our return, we found that all was well after we had finished eating. Not long after, an hour and a half later, Little Andrew was called back to the back office and we went downstairs to hear some sound as we counted the money. I kept tabs on him while learning how to answer calls and handling calls from specific individuals. Little Andrew was on the phone with someone who had a really long conversation when they said something that made him scream in distress. Let me reassure you that Little Andrew was just like me, and that we both have a tendency to get angry people. Do we scream without any justification? The act of him yelling at someone on the phone, "Don't talk about my staff or you'll get arrested," was nauseating. I was compelled to inquire about the incident. As per his statement, the person who called said that they had been there for some time and had ordered 2 large fries, a double quarter pounder, and several other items. According to Little Andrew, they had reported that our employee who was working the front window had been extremely rude and declined to provide him with the fry he was missing. Little Andrew was told by him that he would drag the employee through the window, beat her to death, and leave her for dead in our drive-thru. It was evident that I was quite disturbed, perplexed, and unsure of every detail. Hence, I went as far as asking the employee for her side. She looked at his receipt, and there was only 1 big fry. She was a very nice person and had told the man that he had only ordered 1 big fry. She maintains that the man smiled and drove away. As I stepped out the door to get my ride home, a car pulled into the parking lot several hours later. I had a gut instinct to believe that this was the person who had called earlier. Without delay, I took out my phone and set up the camera, pointed it towards Little Andrew and the man who was now yelling at him from the counter. Andrew, who was small in size, had his arms crossed. He caught me filming and observed, looked at me, and then called Andrew, indicating the other manager. Upon finishing my task, I communicated to Andrew what was happening and mentioned the need for assistance or guidance. He advised me to remain composed until the police arrived, as a colleague had called them during the altercation. The police eventually appeared, and everyone who was in attendance or saw the incident had to provide a statement. The man was escorted to the station for questioning. It's not necessarily a scary thing. The subsequent one terrified me to such an extent that I had to call my partner and mother to convey my love for them. This story was written in May of 2021, a few months after my initial employment at McDonald's. 3 individuals were in the process of closing that night. My team comprises of D, C, and KK was involved in an abusive relationship, but later started exploring ways to break free from it. She was supposed to be with us as she closed the jail, but when she called it, she said she couldn't come in because she was in a holding cell for fighting her boyfriend. Kindly note that Kay and her abusive boyfriend shared a car, and he didn't go to jail for hitting her since she was the only one who made it out alive. For 2 weeks prior to my statement, the abusive boyfriend had been hacked into C's messenger and sent messages to the work group chat, including things like, "I'm a stupid C word. I am a big fan of P words," threats like taking down the store and saving C for last. He never followed up with them, so we decided to leave K and C out of the conversation. During the closing hour, it was approximately 1.5 hours until 11 p.m., which signifies roughly 9:30 p.m. I was cleaning my house early when I saw Kay's car pull into the drive-thru. My heart was shattered when I heard her say that she wouldn't come on that day. I dashed towards the back to inquire about Kay's status, whether she was still in jail, had not arrived, or if her boyfriend owned the car. His affirmation caused my heart to break down even more than usual. He inquired why I had to clarify that I witnessed their car pulling into the road, which was a nonsensical statement. He was present in this location. It's possible that his threats are coming to fruition. After hearing the news, C snatched D and we were quickly taken to the crew room at the rear of the store. He removed his work attire, advising us to remain silent and avoid talking. If I don't return in 10 minutes, he instructed us to contact the police. This is the moment that terrorized the mind. While crying, I contacted my fiancé and mother, apologizing for all the wrongs I'd committed and telling them that I loved them. D followed suit. He returned 5 minutes later, holding Kay in his arms, and explained that they had released her due to someone paying for her bail. Despite everything, I was grateful that I didn't experience any tragedy and still exist. I'm still questioning what might have taken place if the person was actually me. Was it possible for me to get out of the back door with D? If I had gone to bed that night, would I have died? A warning has been issued. Children are among the victims portrayed in the following story. The unsettling strangers, a gift from Bethany who was disorganized. Back in 2017, I was working the late shift at a McDonald's. I'll state that it was in Oklahoma, but I won't disclose its precise location. At approximately 11 p.m., the restaurant's usual slow tempo had settled in. The fryer's gentle whimper, the cash register beep. Nothing remarkable. The front counter was where I dealt with the occasional customer who came in for a late-night snack. The area was almost deserted, with only a few remaining individuals around enjoying fries or sipping soda. That's the point at which it occurred. The odd person walks in a dilapidated overcoat that is no longer present. Although it wasn't very cold, I think people had a reason to dress in the way they do. He walks into the room without any regard for the menu. He seems to be anticipating someone, so I give him a salute and resume taking orders. Nonetheless, the person walks straight to one of the booths and takes a seat. It's not uncommon for people to hang out, enjoy the free Wi-Fi, or simply socialize, but something about this guy made me feel uneasy. While I'm sifting through customers or tidying up the front desk, I spotted him for an hour. I haven't made any arrangements yet. My inquisitiveness is at its highest, so I pay attention to him. He's glancing off into space, as if in a dreamlike state. At that juncture, a colleague who had been cleaning the lobby appears to be bothered and scared. He leans and sighs. There's a man in the booth who has blood on it under his coat, I can tell you that. Being stuck behind a McDonald's cash register means that you don't want to hear such news. I gaze back at the peculiar fellow, attempting to examine him more closely. I believe I can perceive it, a strange, bold, and generous-looking coat. The manager becomes aware of the situation and takes action. She walks over, trying to keep a low profile about it, and asks if everything is all right. Nevertheless, this man doesn't acknowledge her. He chose to stand and leave, without any communication to the manager. Currently, I'm under the impression that he may be slightly disturbed or has a mental issue. However, the story doesn't conclude there. The individual exits, passes through the parking area, stops for a moment, surveys the surroundings, and proceeds directly to the car of one of my colleagues, Through the window of that car, I witness a man reaching into his coat and leaving something behind. The lobby is being cleaned by my colleague, who also notices it. He whispers, "Are you not telling the truth?" I'm the driving force behind my actions. The manager, feeling concerned about something flouting, alerts the police, and we all keep an eye on the guy from the window. There is a sense of tension in the air. The manager advises the colleague to stay indoors, but he's having none of it. The peculiar person departs, and the individual who has the car runs outside to investigate what he found inside. He's being observed from inside, leaning into his car. He doesn't take too much time to respond. His gaze widens and he holds his mouth shut, taking a deep breath. He partially stumbles, half runs back into the restaurant, appearing as if he were in a pale mood. My colleague is hyperventilating while the manager is on the phone with the police to inform us of what he found. The fact that he left a baby in my car is shocking. It's gone. The chaos that ensued can be easily pictured. The manager was attempting to provide the police with as much information as possible. The rest of the staff is escorted to the back, away from the unfolding madness. It appeared as though time had run out. Before anyone else does, the police are putting everything together and taking statements. Soon enough, the baby is being found by the manager, a co-worker who was also present, and the police. I recollect leaving and then wincing at the memory of discovering that someone had abandoned a dead baby in our parking lot. It was a topic of conversation the following day, and I couldn't help but wonder about the man's concealed dead baby under his coat when he sat in the booth. It makes me feel uneasy when I think about it. It's surprising that something like that could happen in your backyard, you know? Our minds were consumed by the whole thing. The feeling of dread that permeated everything was still present. It's the type of thing that is commonly reported on television, not something you would expect to see on a late-night shift at McDonald's. The baby and the worker who discovered it were both impoverished. The look on his face is something I'll never forget. Honestly, I'm relieved that it wasn't me who had to witness it. To this day, I am curious about the whereabouts of the poor. Was the baby's death caused by that individual? Take it away from someone? Did he suffer from mental breakdown after losing his child? I'm uncertain. The tumultuous night I experienced at McDonald's in our town in Oklahoma is depicted by this. When you least expect it, reality hits you like a ton of bricks, inhabiting a parking spot, from Jay Lee's perspective. The summer of 1992 was the time when that object first appeared behind our McDonald's. As a manager, I was working the night shift. Those nights saw me, Tanya, and Jamie closing in. The smallness of the town meant that business took a while to gain momentum. Only a handful of people passing through the drive-thru as they returned from the bar. The first time I laid eyes on it, it was the very first night. I was transferring the waste to the dumpster. It was completely dark outside. The only thing that didn't go out was the one street lamp we had on, which illuminated the parking lot to some extent. While taking the bag to the dumpster, I noticed something moving in my view. I turned around to see this big dark guy positioned on the other side of the dumpster, digging through a stack of trash that had either spilled or been dug out. The first thing I thought of was a bear. From time to time, we'd have them wandering around town in search of food. I observed that this wasn't a bear as I looked at it. The slender build was noticeable with no hair and patches. The moment it turned around to face me, I saw its unblemished appearance. The skin was the only thing that could have made the eyes appear human instead of it. The mouth was also peculiar. The thick lips were positioned over the small, jagged teeth. For a brief moment, I stared at it. It seemed to be looking at me. I was left with no choice but to stare at it now that it had stopped doing so. At last, I was able to talk with ease about myself. I threw the garbage bag I was carrying and booked it back into the house, almost hitting Tanya with my car as I entered through the back door. She glanced at me and asked what was wrong, revealing my face as wide as a sheet. As I shared what I had observed with her and Jamie, my body erupted in agony. Tanya was skeptical, stating that I must have seen a raccoon or sword. Jamie's demeanor was marked by a lack of conversation. I think he could tell that I was not just joking around. For the remainder of the night, I persisted in peering out the back door, fearful that something was about to attempt to enter. That night, I didn't come across it again. Tanya teased me for being so frightened, yet I was unable to laugh at it. My mind was consumed by the image of that eerie face. The sight I saw was within my understanding, even if I couldn't make sense of it. Jamie had faith in me, even though we didn't discuss it that night. Within the next few weeks, it was also observed by others. It would go through the wasteland at odd hours. The back door was scratched a few times, which could have been due to the smell of food inside. After seeing it in person during a trash removal operation, Tanya quickly changed her tune. She rushed back into the room, screaming at loudness. We didn't venture out alone at night after that. In pairs or with each other, we would clean up the mess and be vigilant for any potential danger. About 3 weeks after I saw it, the most unsettling experience occurred. As we waited, Jamie and I observed the thing wandering around the parking lot's perimeter. There was a street lamp nearby that really brightened it up. The most impressive look we've ever witnessed it. Don't worry, it caused my stomach to squirm. The object's appearance was more human than I had anticipated. Despite walking on 2 legs and 4, it looked like an ape when it was crouched on top of something. In the areas where it was bald, there was only a mottled pinkish flesh. The muscles underneath were well defined, but the proportions were off with dangling long arms and short bowed legs. The most unpleasant part of the face was the flat, lifeless face that was constantly looking at him. We witnessed a paralyzed creature wandering around the lot, swishly inspecting garbage cans and drainage ditches. Without warning, it stopped and turned towards the building with its nostrils tucked away. It must have felt like we were watching it in some way. The creature let out an unusual scream before moving towards us. The sight of the thing, which was about to charge at us, finally caused me to lose my slumber. I yelled for Jamie to enter, and we ran through the back doorway, knocking down the metal door in front of us. We were in a state of panic, concerned that it would force itself into us. Even after a few minutes, I managed to find the courage to peek out of the window. Once again, the lot was empty. The object was no longer present. We were unable to identify its source or origin. Thanks reported seeing a wild man walking through the woods outside town on certain occasions. Nonetheless, the majority dismissed those as insane speculations. As the weeks went by, Jamie, Tanya, and I adapted to our creepy nighttime companion. Keeping an eye out for trash or leaving the house late at night was also important to keep in mind. One evening, it just ceased to be there. The thing disappeared after lurking around our McDonald's for approximately 3 months. I'm questioning whether someone finally shot the thing, having grown weary of going through their garbage. One side believes that it may have moved on to find better hunting or scavenging grounds, or perhaps even a partner. If I were to tell people what I saw, I am certain they would not be swayed. My credibility is bolstered by the presence of 2 witnesses. That was genuinely satisfactory. Even after all these years, there are nights when I can't help but dream about seeing a strange, human-looking face through the back window with an evil entity in the background.